When we talk about the economy, it's all about big things, right? Job numbers, GDP. But what does it actually cost for a family to just get by? Today, we're going to dig into the hidden financial struggles that a huge number of households in Oregon are facing, and it all really boils down to one surprising number. So let's just jump right in with that number, 44%. And no, that's not an unemployment rate or some tax figure. It's a measure of real everyday financial hardship.
So what does that actually mean? Well, it means that back in 2021, almost half, think about that, nearly half of all households in Oregon simply couldn't afford the basics in their own communities. We're talking about a massive but often invisible part of the population.
And to really get our heads around this, we need to meet Alice. Now, it's not a person's name. It's actually an acronym that stands for hundreds of thousands of Oregonians.
So ALICE stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and here's the kicker, employed. That last word, employed, is absolutely key here. These are people with jobs. They're our neighbors, our friends, maybe even our family. They're working, often in really essential jobs, but they're still stuck, just unable to get ahead financially. And this is where it gets really tricky. ALICE households aren't technically in poverty by the official definition. They actually earn too much to get a lot of government help, but, and this is a big but, their income is nowhere near enough to cover the actual cost of living today. It's a tough spot to be in. Okay, so take a look at this breakdown. It really shows you the scale of the problem. While about 12% of Oregon households were below the federal poverty level, a staggering 32% were ALICE. That's almost 3 times as many people. We're talking about a huge group of families who are basically one car repair, one medical bill away from a real crisis.
So, you might be asking, why is there such a massive gap? How can the official poverty numbers be so different from the reality for so many people? Well, it all boils down to how we measure what it actually costs to live.
It's kind of like we're using 2 different rulers. On one side, you've got the federal poverty level. It's an old measure, seriously, from the 1960s, and it was mostly based on the cost of food back then. It just doesn't factor in today's crazy costs for housing or childcare. But then you have this other ruler, the ALICE Household Survival Budget. This one is way more realistic. It calculates the bare minimum, no-frills cost for everything a family needs today, and it even does it county by county.
And wow, this table just lays the disconnect bare. For a family of 4 in Oregon in 2021, the poverty line was set at about $26,500. But the actual cost to just survive, we're talking just the basics, nothing fancy, was over $73,000. That is a massive gap, almost $47,000 wide. It's just a different reality. And things are not getting easier either. This is a moving target. Just between 2019 and 2021, that realistic survival budget shot up by 13%. Families were getting squeezed by housing costs, food prices. Everything was going up, putting even more pressure on them.
So, what does this look like across the state? Well, one thing's for sure. This isn't just a Portland problem or a rural problem. It's happening everywhere, in every single community. But it doesn't affect everyone in the same way.
Yeah, there are some pretty clear inequities here. Financial hardship hits some communities much harder than others. For instance, 64% of Black households and 54% of Hispanic households in Oregon were living below that ALICE threshold. That's way above the state average of 44%.
So who are these folks in ALICE households? Well, a lot of the time, they're the people we see every single day, the essential workers who keep our world turning. I mean, just look at this. More than half of all cashiers and cooks in Oregon are earning less than what they need to get by. We rely on them every day, but for so many of them, the paycheck just doesn't stretch far enough.
Okay, let's bring this down from the 30,000-foot view. To make all this data feel a little more real, let's zoom right in on one specific group, the Latino community in Central Oregon, and see how these pressures are playing out for them.
Housing. That's one of the biggest squeezes for sure. In Central Oregon, almost 58% of Latino households who rent are what we call cost-burdened. All that means is they're spending way more than a third of their income just to keep a roof over their heads. And when rent takes that big of a bite, there's not much left for, well, anything else.
And this is a really important point from James Koch of the Homeless Leadership Coalition. He says these struggles are often hidden from view. You might have families with 5 people living in a single room just to make rent. They aren't homeless by the official definition, but come on, that is absolutely a sign of a major housing crisis.
And that strain pops up in other places too, like healthcare. If you look at Deschutes County, for example, the rate of Latinos without health insurance is more than double the rate for their white neighbors. That's a huge barrier if you just need to see a doctor.
But we have to remember, behind all these numbers are real people. People who are the backbone of Central Oregon's economy. People like Lorena Barrera, a farm worker in Culver. It's tough, physical work, and it often doesn't pay enough to get by. But she still finds joy in it. She says, "I like to see the plants growing." And that's just such a powerful reminder of the dignity and value that these essential workers bring to all of us every single day.
All right, let's pull back out for the big picture again and look ahead. A lot of that pandemic-era help has dried up, but the economic challenges for Alice households, they haven't gone anywhere. In fact, there are some pretty clear warning signs on the horizon.
So what are we seeing? Well, for one, getting enough food is still a major problem. Paying rent and other bills is a constant struggle. And all that financial stress, it's taking a huge toll on people's mental health. We're seeing more anxiety, more depression. These aren't just temporary blips. These are the lingering scars of deep economic instability.
And this chart from late 2022 really hammers the point home. Look at this. More than half, 53% of households below that Alice line said they had trouble paying their usual expenses. Compare that to households with a bit more financial breathing room, only 17%. That's a massive difference. It shows you who is really feeling the pressure day in and day out.
So it leaves us with a really fundamental question, doesn't it? These Alice households, they are the backbone of our economy. There are childcare providers, the cashiers at our grocery stores, the farm workers who grow our food. So when the very people doing these essential jobs can't afford the basics for a stable life, what does that really mean for the future of all of our communities?